supposed to pay us $3,000 in cash.
I own this bank.
That's impossible.
Sir, you're being detained.
Call your executive office.
A man in a wheelchair rolls into a bank. Hoodie, jeans, no tie, no briefcase, just a calm face and a simple errand. The teller watches him for 3 seconds and decides she already knows everything she needs to know. Within minutes, a police officer is standing over him. Customers are staring. Someone's recording. And Malik Carter, hands folded in his lap, voice completely steady, is being treated like a suspect inside a building that answers to him. They had no idea. If you believe everyone deserves dignity, regardless of how they dress, hit like and subscribe before we go any further. This story is just getting started. Malik Carter left his hotel at 8:47 in the morning. His driver had the route already pulled up. Board meeting at the downtown executive office, noon sharp, with a conference call scheduled for 10:15 that he would take from the car. But before any of that, there was one stop. One errand that should have taken 5 minutes and meant nothing beyond the transaction itself. He had $20,000 in cash sitting in a flat leather portfolio on his lap. The money was clean, counted and bundled in neat stacks, earmarked for a real estate closing later in the week. A personal investment that had nothing to do with the bank and everything to do with the quiet life he was building outside of it. He had meant to deposit it the previous Thursday. It had been pushed twice by back-to-back obligations, and this morning was the first window that made sense. He told his driver to pull up to the West Harlem branch on 145th Street. It was a branch he knew well, not because he visited it often. He didn't make a habit of showing up unannounced at individual locations, but because he had reviewed its performance numbers personally for 3 consecutive quarters, had signed off on its renovation budget 2 years earlier, and had shaken hands with its branch manager at a regional leadership summit the previous spring. The building was his in every meaningful sense except the most obvious one, and even that was a technicality. His name was on the charter. He was wearing a gray hoodie, dark jeans, and a pair of clean white sneakers. Around his wrist was a watch, simple, silver, the one his mother had given him the year he made partner at his first firm, long before banking had consumed the better part of 2 decades of his life. No jacket, no tie, no lanyard, no laptop bag, nothing that would signal to a stranger what he did or who he was. He had an 11-hour day ahead of him, and he had dressed for the marathon, not the photo op. His driver helped position the chair at the curb, and Malik wheeled himself through the automatic doors without pausing, the way a person moves through a space they have no reason to feel uncertain about. The branch was running at its usual morning pace. A short line had formed at the teller stations. 4 people ahead of him, a mix of regulars and commuters stopping in before work. The lobby smelled like recycled air and fresh coffee from the small station near the waiting area. Everything was exactly as it should be. A normal Tuesday morning at a mid-sized branch in a busy urban corridor. Malik joined the line and waited. He checked his phone twice. A calendar reminder for the 10:15 call. A message from his chief of staff Elena Voss confirming his noon arrival. He typed back a single word. Confirmed. Then he put the phone away and watched the tellers work. He noticed the deposit slip dispenser near the door was empty. He made a mental note. Drop in the comments. What city or country are you watching from? And if you've ever been judged by how you look, this one's for you. When the line moved and he reached the counter, the teller who looked up was Rebecca Langley. She was in her early 30s, her hair pulled back, her name badge straight, and centered on her lapel. She had worked at this branch for 6 years. In those 6 years, she had developed a set of instincts she trusted completely, about customers, about transactions, about who belonged at her window and who required a closer look. She had never been formally disciplined for those instincts. She had been questioned twice, informally, both times by a supervisor who had ultimately deferred to her judgment and let the matter drop. The complaints had been filed. The complaints had gone nowhere. She looked up at Malik, and something in her face changed before he said a single word. It wasn't dramatic. It wasn't the kind of shift that anyone watching from a distance would have immediately identified as what it was. It was subtle. A tightening around the eyes, a slight pull of the mouth, a recalibration of her posture from professional courtesy to something that sat just below it. Her eyes moved the way eyes move when a person is making a rapid assessment. Face, chair, hoodie, the leather portfolio on his lap, back to his face. The customer she had just processed, a white man in his 50s, business casual, who had deposited a cashier's check and made small talk about the weather, had been waved through in under 90 seconds. She had smiled at him as he left. She did not smile at Malik. "Good morning," Malik said. "I'd like to make a cash deposit." "Account number," Rebecca said. "Not a question." "A toll." Malik provided it. She typed it in. She looked at the screen, then looked at him, then looked at the screen again. "What are you depositing?" Malik opened the leather portfolio and placed the bundled cash on the counter between them. $20,000, organized and rubber-banded in stacks of 1,000, the way a person deposits money they have counted and planned for. Rebecca stared at it. The professional mask held, but underneath it, something had already decided. Where did this come from? Malik looked at her steadily. "It's my money. I'd like to deposit it into my account." "I'm asking where it came from, sir." "I understand the question," Malik said. "It came from me, from my personal finances. I'd like to make a deposit." She crossed her arms. "Not all the way, just enough. We have protocols for large cash transactions. I need to understand the source." Malik was patient. He had been in rooms with people who underestimated him for 22 years, and he had learned a long time ago that patience was not weakness. He explained that the funds were from personal savings, that they were being deposited ahead of a real estate closing, and that he was happy to provide whatever documentation she needed within the normal scope of the transaction. She asked for his ID. He provided his driver's license. She looked at it. She looked at him. She asked for a second form of identification. He gave her his bank card. She asked how long he had held the account. He told her. She asked if anyone had given him the money. He told her no. She asked again, differently, if he was making the deposit on behalf of someone else. He told her no. The man who had been in line behind Malik stepped up to an adjacent window and completed his entire transaction, a cash deposit of his own, while Rebecca was still questioning Malik. It took 4 minutes. No one asked him where his money came from. No one asked him for a second ID. He left with a receipt and a good morning. Malik noticed. He said nothing about it. He waited. And then Rebecca said what she said next, and the temperature of the conversation changed permanently. What she says next will shock you. Make sure you're subscribed. You don't want the algorithm burying this story before it's over. People dress like you don't usually come in here with this kind of money. She said it quickly, like it was an observation rather than an accusation. Like it was just common sense stated, plainly. And maybe in her mind it was. Maybe that was exactly the problem. Malik looked at her for a long moment. "I'd like to speak with your branch manager." "He's unavailable." "Then I'll wait." "Sir, I'm going to need you to step aside while I verify the source of these funds further. You can verify them by processing the transaction. I'm not comfortable doing that without additional verification." She picked up his ID and the bundled cash, placed them in a small tray, and stood up from her station. She told him she would be right back. She walked to the back of the branch, through a door marked staff, only asterisk, and she did not come back. If you've ever watched someone be treated as a suspect for doing something completely ordinary, you already know what the next 4 minutes felt like. Stay with this story, because what happens next is exactly why it needs to be told. Malik waited at the counter. The cash was gone. His ID was gone. Other customers in the lobby began to notice the man in the wheelchair, standing alone at a closed window, waiting for a teller who wasn't coming back. The branch continued to operate around him. Keyboards clicked. Receipts printed. Nobody at the other window said anything. At the 4-minute mark, Malik checked his phone. 9:58 a.m. He had 17 minutes before his conference call. At the 6-minute mark, he saw the patrol car pull up outside. Officer Grant Holloway entered the branch with the particular posture of someone who has been told, before arriving, what kind of situation they are walking into. He was broad-shouldered, mid-30s, 9 years on the force. He wore his certainty the way some people wear a uniform, like it was load-bearing, like removing it would cause something to collapse. He had responded to calls like this one before. Suspicious individual, large amount of cash. Story doesn't add up. He knew what those calls meant. He thought he knew. He scanned the lobby once. His eyes settled on Malik immediately. Rebecca emerged from the back office at that precise moment and pointed. "That's him. He came in with $20,000 in cash, and I couldn't verify the source." Holloway walked directly to Malik's chair. He did not stop at the counter. He did not ask Rebecca a follow-up question. He did not review any documentation. He had already composed the narrative in his head during the drive over, and he was here to confirm it, not investigate it. Sir. His voice was loud, not raised loud. The kind of loud that fills a room and makes everyone in it look up. Where did you get this cash? It's mine, Malik said. I'm here to make a deposit. That's not what I asked you. I understand that, and I'm answering you. The money is mine. It came from my personal savings. I'm making a deposit into my personal account. My ID is with the teller. Holloway looked at Rebecca. She shook her head slightly in a way that communicated something without saying it out loud. Holloway turned back to Malik. I'm going to need you to explain exactly how you came to be in possession of $20,000 in cash. I earned it, Malik said. I work for it. What do you do? I work in finance. Holloway let out a short sound. Not quite a laugh, but adjacent to one. Finance, he repeated, like the word required quotation marks. And your employer is? Malik paused. Just one beat. Meridian Trust Bank. Holloway looked around the branch, then looked back at Malik. You work for this bank? I do. In what capacity? A senior one. Holloway didn't pursue it. He had already decided the answer wasn't going to change his read on the situation. He turned to Rebecca. You have his ID? She produced it. He looked at it. He ran it through dispatch. Clean record, no warrants, no flags of any kind. He looked at the result on his radio, and then he looked at Malik, and instead of reconsidering, he repositioned. You're going to need to come with me while we sort this out. I haven't done anything, Malik said. You're not under arrest. You're being detained for questioning related to suspected financial fraud. On what basis? On the basis that a bank employee has flagged this transaction as suspicious, and I am responding to that concern. Her concern is not probable cause. Holloway stepped closer. Sir, I'm asking you to cooperate. I am cooperating. I've answered every question you've asked me. My ID is clean. My account is legitimate. There is no fraud here. Holloway looked at Malik's wrist, the specific look of a man calculating something, and said, I'm going to ask you one more time. The lobby had gone quiet. 12 customers who had been minding their own business were now watching with the focused attention of people witnessing something they knew was wrong but weren't sure what to do about. 2 of them already had their phones out. And then Malik said it. Clearly, calmly, looking directly at Holloway without blinking. My name is Malik Carter. I am the General CEO of Meridian Trust Bank. This branch, this building, every teller behind that counter, the renovation that was completed here 2 years ago, all of it operates under my authority. I did not come here as a customer. I came here as the person who runs this institution, to make a personal deposit before a board meeting. I am telling you this so that you understand the full picture of what is happening right now. He reached into the inner pocket of his hoodie and produced his executive credentials, the official Meridian Trust Bank CEO identification card, laminated, bearing his photograph, his full name, his title, and the corporate seal in embossed gold. He held it out. Holloway looked at it. Rebecca, who had stepped out from behind the counter during the exchange, looked at it too. And then Rebecca laughed. It was sharp and brief and dismissive. The CEO of Meridian Trust is based out of the corporate office in Midtown. He would not be here in a hoodie with cash in his lap. Holloway handed the card back. Sir, I appreciate that, but I can't verify credentials of that nature in the field. You're going to need to come with me. You just told me the CEO is a man, Malik said quietly. I want you to think carefully about why you said that. Holloway's jaw tightened. He reached for the restraints on his belt. Malik Carter, the man who had spent 22 years building a career that now oversaw 280 branches, 11,000 employees, and $4.2 billion in managed assets, sat in his wheelchair in the middle of a branch he had personally approved the renovation budget for, while a police officer placed zip restraints around his wrists and informed him he was being detained. He did not resist. He did not raise his voice. He sat with his hands in his lap and he waited, because he knew, with a clarity that only comes from having survived a very long time in spaces that weren't built for you, that the next few minutes were going to settle everything. Don't go anywhere. What happens in the next 60 seconds changes every single person in this room's life permanently. Share this video right now. Someone in your circle needs to see what happens next. Elena Voss had been Malik's chief of staff for 7 years. She had a gift for reading the temperature of a situation from a text message, and the text Malik had sent her at 10:03 a.m., 4 words, West Harlem branch. Now, had told her everything she needed to know. She arrived 11 minutes later. 2 black SUVs, 4 members of the bank's executive security team, and Elena herself. Blazer, tablet, the expression of someone who has spent 7 years solving problems and is very clear about who created this one. She walked through the front doors of the branch, saw Malik sitting in his wheelchair with restraints on his wrists, and stopped moving for exactly 1 second. Then she crossed the lobby. She addressed Holloway first. Remove those restraints right now. Holloway turned. Ma'am, this is an active detainment. I am Elena Voss, Chief of Staff to the General CEO of Meridian Trust Bank, whose wrists you have just restrained inside his own institution. She held up her tablet. On the screen was Malik's executive profile, pulled directly from the Meridian Trust Bank corporate website. Photograph, name, title, biography, 22 years of tenure, 6 years as CEO, oversight of 280 branches across 9 states. She turned the screen toward Holloway, then toward Rebecca. This man, in this hoodie, in this wheelchair, in this branch, is the person who signs the paychecks of everyone behind that counter. He is the reason this building was renovated in 2022. His executive portrait is hanging in the second-floor corridor of this branch right now, alongside every CEO this institution has had since its founding. Would you like someone to take you up there? Or is the corporate website sufficient? Holloway looked at the screen. He looked at Malik. He looked at the restraints on Malik's wrists. And for the first time since he had walked through the door, something shifted in his expression. Not regret, not yet, but the beginning of the specific discomfort that comes when a person realizes they have been catastrophically wrong in a room full of witnesses. Rebecca had gone pale. She was still holding the leather portfolio. Malik's portfolio with his cash in it, and she was holding it the way someone holds something they wish they could put down and walk away from. Elena turned to her. You called 911 and reported this man for suspected financial fraud. You told the dispatcher that his story didn't add up. You demanded multiple forms of identification from him while processing the customer ahead of him, who made a comparable cash deposit, without a single additional question. Elena opened a folder that one of the security team had handed her. I also have documentation of 4 prior complaints filed against you by minority customers over the past 3 years. All 4 involved the same pattern. Excessive questioning, demands for additional identification, suggestions of fraudulent intent. All 4 were dismissed by your supervisor. None of them were dismissed because they weren't credible. Rebecca opened her mouth. I was following protocol. You profiled him. And today the person you profiled was your CEO. The lobby was silent in the way that a room goes silent when something irreversible has just happened, and everyone present knows it. Holloway removed the restraints. Malik brought his hands forward and set them in his lap without ceremony. He looked at Holloway, and then at Rebecca, and when he spoke, his voice had the quality of something that had been compressed under enormous pressure and was now simply stating facts. I came into my own bank this morning to make a deposit. I waited in line. I approached the counter respectfully. I answered every question I was asked. I provided my identification. I explained the source of my funds. I asked to speak with a manager. At every point, I was treated as a suspect. Not because anything I did was suspicious, but because of how I look and how I was dressed. That is the only explanation for what happened here today. He let that sit for a moment. I have worked in this industry for 22 years. I have managed branches, managed regions, managed an entire institution. I understand compliance. I understand fraud prevention. I understand why large cash transactions require documentation. What happened today was not compliance. It was not caution. It was a decision made the moment I rolled through that door, before I said a single word. And the consequences of that decision are going to be significant. He looked at Rebecca. You're terminated. Effective immediately. Rebecca's face crumpled. Please. I didn't mean. I know exactly what you meant. He turned to Elena. Process the deposit. Elena nodded. walked to the counter, and handed the portfolio to the branch manager, who had materialized from his office sometime during Elena's speech and was now performing the specific body language of a man trying to make himself structurally smaller. He processed the deposit in under 3 minutes. No questions. The 4 customer recordings of the incident were online before noon. By 3 p.m., the clips had been viewed collectively over 6 million times. By the following morning, the number was past 30 million, and every major news network had run the story. The freeze frame that spread fastest showed Malik Carter sitting in his wheelchair with restraints on his wrists, in the middle of the Meridian Trust branch on 145th Street, while Rebecca Langley stood behind the counter holding his cash. Rebecca Langley was terminated the same afternoon. Meridian Trust Bank's legal team drafted the filing that evening, citing violation of company anti-discrimination policy and federal fair banking statutes. Criminal charges for filing a false police report followed within the week. The case went to trial 3 months later. The jury deliberated for under 2 hours. Rebecca was convicted, sentenced to community service and probation, and banned from working in any federally regulated financial institution for life. She was 31 years old. Officer Grant Holloway was placed on administrative leave within 24 hours of the incident. An internal affairs investigation reviewed his 9-year service record and found 7 prior complaints related to racially biased conduct. All of them previously cleared in isolation. All of them suddenly coherent as a pattern when viewed together. His body camera footage from the branch showed him dismissing Malik's credentials with a laugh. It showed him placing restraints on a man who had broken no law, committed no infraction, and had identified himself clearly and credibly. He was terminated 5 weeks after the incident. His appeal was denied. No law enforcement agency in the state hired him afterward. Malik's legal team filed a federal civil rights lawsuit against the city, the police department, and Holloway individually. The charges included unlawful detention, false arrest, and violation of Fourth Amendment protections. The city settled for $1.35 million. The settlement included mandatory reforms, bias training protocols for all officers, independent oversight for discrimination-related complaints, and new procedural requirements for any financial fraud detainment, including mandatory verification of claimed credentials before physical restraint. Meridian Trust Bank did not escape the reckoning either. Malik used the incident as a forcing function for reforms he had been pushing internally for years. Bias training became mandatory at every branch for every employee at every level. A third-party oversight system was implemented for customer complaints. Quarterly audits of customer interactions, broken down by race, income presentation, and transaction type, were built into the bank's compliance framework. 3 other employees across the network, with documented complaint histories similar to Rebecca's, were quietly let go. The bank issued a public apology and committed $3 million to a fund supporting victims of financial discrimination. The West Harlem branch on 145th Street was quietly remodeled the following spring. In the main lobby, visible from the front doors, they hung a new portrait. Malik Carter, General CEO, in his executive photograph, same face, same eyes, the watch his mother gave him just visible at the cuff of his jacket. Beneath it, a small plaque. 12 words. Every person who walks through these doors deserves to be treated with dignity. The deposit slip dispenser by the entrance was restocked the same week. Malik had mentioned it in his notes from that morning, before everything else happened. Even then, he had been doing his job. If this story moved you, share it. Subscribe for more stories of justice, dignity, and the moments when the truth finally wins. And tell us in the comments, what should happen to officers and employees like these?